These men have earned tens of millions inside the ring. But step into their world outside of it, and you'd never know it. No private jets, no entourage, no ego, just fighters who clawed their way to the top and refused to let the money change who they are. This is the top 5 boxing millionaires who live like they've got nothing to prove because they already proved everything. Number 5, Vitali Klitschko, $80 million net worth. Vitali Klitschko grew up in Soviet Ukraine in a military family with a father who was stationed near Chernobyl when the reactor exploded in 1986. He watched his father slowly die from radiation-related illness years later. That experience, living in the shadow of catastrophe, watching his family suffer, never left him. He became a world heavyweight champion, won 45 out of 47 professional fights, and earned tens of millions of dollars. He could have lived anywhere in the world. He chose to go home. In 2014, Vitali retired at 42 and entered politics, assuming the office of mayor of Kiev. A man with $80 million in the bank, trading a luxury retirement to run a city under constant political pressure, then under actual bombs. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, Vitali Klitschko did not evacuate. He did not retreat to a penthouse in Monaco. He put on a military uniform and stayed. He and his brother were financing projects for communities in the zones closest to Chernobyl, even as war tore through the country. The man who was once the most feared heavyweight in Europe was now defending the streets of his city with everything he had. He never sold a flashy lifestyle. He never built a brand around excess. Vitali Klitschko spent his millions in service. That is what separates him from every other fighter on this list. Number 4, Wladimir Klitschko, $90 million net worth. For 11 straight years, Wladimir Klitschko ruled the heavyweight division. He made over $200 million during his professional career. He had every reason to become boxing's biggest showman, and he chose to become something far more rare, a gentleman. Klitschko has been described as reflective, deep-thinking, humble, considered and respectful. In a sport built on trash talk and theatrics, he refused to play along. Industry insiders admitted that his refusal to embrace controversy likely cost him millions in American pay-per-view revenue. He didn't care. What was important to Wladimir Klitschko was not the same as what was important to most other sports superstars. While dominating the heavyweight division, he earned a PhD in sports science. He co-founded the Klitschko Foundation with his brother Vitali, funding over 250 projects, building schools, sports complexes, and centers supporting vulnerable youth, impacting over 250,000 Ukrainian children. He became a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador and traveled on humanitarian missions to Africa and Latin America. When the war in Ukraine began, both Klitschko brothers, millionaires who could have fled to comfort, stayed. The brothers could have left Ukraine to live a quiet life of luxury, but they stayed to defend their homeland. This is a man worth $90 million who chose duty over safety. Humility isn't just a personality trait for Wladimir Klitschko, it's a way of life. Number 3, Lennox Lewis, $140 million net worth. He was the last undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, the man who beat Mike Tyson at his most dangerous. Lennox Lewis was worth $140 million by the time he hung up his gloves. Yet he never became the flashy superstar the sport of boxing wanted him to be. Lewis was born in West Ham, London, to Jamaican immigrant parents. At 12, his mother moved him to Kitchener, Ontario, in Canada, where he grew up as the quiet outsider who put his head down and worked. That discipline never left him. When the fight money started rolling in, Lewis didn't buy a fleet of sports cars or a mansion in Beverly Hills. He invested quietly, stayed out of tabloids, and kept his private life exactly that, private. Lennox Lewis is an avid chess player and funded an after-school program to teach underprivileged kids how to play the game. That's not the headline of a man drunk on wealth. That's a man who still remembers where he came from. while peers from his era went broke or made desperate comeback fights for paychecks. Lewis had the self-discipline to retire in 2004 on top and walk away clean. His legacy built on dignity, a man who earned $50 million from a single Mike Tyson fight and still acts like your neighbor down the street. Number 2. Manny Pacquiao, $220 million. Net worth. Born in Kabawe, Bukidnon, Manny Pacquiao dropped out of school at 14 to help support his family by selling bread and water on the streets. He slept in gyms. He went days without eating. And then, through sheer force of will, he became the only man in history to win world titles in 8 different weight divisions. The money that followed was extraordinary. Hundreds of millions of dollars in fight purses, endorsement deals, pay-per-view cuts. By the time of his fight with Floyd Mayweather in 2015, he was one of the highest-paid athletes on earth. And yet, Manny Pacquiao never stopped being the kid from General Santos City with no shoes and an empty stomach. Despite international fame, Pacquiao remained humble, often smiling, showing respect and acknowledging his roots. He didn't just talk about giving back. He built hospitals, donated millions to calamity victims, and continues to sponsor scholarships and sports programs in the Philippines. He entered politics not for power, but to serve, winning a congressional seat, then becoming a senator, all while still fighting inside the ring. At his International Boxing Hall of Fame induction, Pacquiao described himself as a small boy from the streets of General Santos City with no shoes, no food, no chance, just a dream in his heart. That is the man who showed up at the Hall of Fame. The same man who showed up in every fight. He never became someone else. He stayed exactly who he was, and the world loved him for it. Number 1. George Foreman, $300 million net worth. Most people know George Foreman as the man on the grill, but before the grill, he was one of the most feared human beings on the planet, a destroyer, the man who dismantled Joe Frazier in 2 rounds, the man Muhammad Ali had to trick just to survive. And yet, the story of George Foreman isn't about power, it's about transformation. After losing to Ali in the Rumble in the Jungle, in 1974, Foreman disappeared. He didn't retire to a mansion. He became a Christian preacher in a small church in Houston, Texas, living on almost nothing by choice. For 10 years, he preached, he cooked, he lived simply. No entourage, no spotlight, just a man working through who he was. When he came back to boxing at age 38, then fought again at 45 to become the oldest heavyweight champion in history, the money followed. His name on the George Foreman grill eventually generated $137 million in earnings alone. But he never changed. He still lived in the same Texas community. He sat in diners, talked to strangers, and smiled like a man who had nothing to prove, because he didn't. Foreman understood something rare, that wealth is just a number. What you do with your character is the real legacy. These 5 men prove that what you earn doesn't define you. How you live does. They fought their way to millions and chose to stay exactly who they were. That's not weakness. That's the rarest kind of strength. If this video moved you, hit subscribe and drop a comment. Which of these champions surprised you the most?